Find the amplitude, period, and make a sketch of the graph. A, y equals 3 cosine x. So the amplitude is the absolute value of the coefficient in front of the trig function. So in this case, the amplitude is 3. The period, if you're in radians, is 2 pi divided by the coefficient of the x. In this case, I don't see a number, so the coefficient of the x is 1, so the period is 2 pi. We can use this to make a sketch. So this is a cosine graph. The period is 2 pi, so I know I'm going to include 2 pi on the axis. And I'm going to go halfway between 0 and 2 pi, which is pi. I go halfway again, which is pi over 2. Then halfway between pi and 2 pi would be 3 pi over 2. The cosine graph starts at the peak, which in this case is the amplitude, which is 3. So cosine starts at the peak. It's going to dip down to 0, dip down further to -3, back up to 0, and then back up to the peak again. So we're going to have a curve that vaguely looks kind of smooth and then fits through the points that we just found. I'm not an artist, so let's switch to a graphing calculator and confirm that we've done this correctly. So this is 3 cosine x. The amplitude is 3. This peaks out at 3. At pi over 2, it hits 0. At pi, it hits the bottom. 3 pi over 2, and then at 2 pi, it hits its peak again. Let's do the same thing with our other graph. So y equals -2 sine x. The amplitude is the absolute value of the coefficient of the trig function. So in this case, the amplitude is 2. And the period is 2 pi divided by the coefficient of the x. And again, there isn't one, so the coefficient of x is 1. So the period is 2 pi. Let's make our sketch. So I know that the period is 2 pi, so we've got to include 2 pi. We've got to go the halfway point, which is pi. Half again is pi over 2. Halfway between pi and 2 pi is 1.5 pi, or 3 pi over 2. This is a sine graph. Sine does not start at the amplitude, doesn't start at the peak, it starts at 0. Now usually a sine graph starts at 0, heads up, and then down. However, ours is upside down. We have a negative in front. That means it begins by heading down instead of up. So it's going to head down to -2, back up to 0, up to +2, and then back down to 0 again. And then we're going to try to have a smooth curve that goes through those points. Let's again check on a graphing calculator to make sure that we've got this right. So this is negative sine 2x. This starts at 0, heads down at pi over 2, back up to 0 at pi. It peaks at 3 pi over 2, and then hits 0 again at 2 pi. And so we know we've done our graph correctly.